Coming up on WFT's First at 5, a Florida judge renders a decision between UF Students for Justice in Palestine and state education leaders, what this ruling means for both sides.
And temperatures are set to drop into the 30s tonight. We'll talk about how long these cooler temperatures last coming up. First up.
From the University of Florida's College of Journalism and Communications, you're watching WUFT News.
A federal judge denied a request for a preliminary injunction by the UF chapter of the Students for Justice in Palestine today. This is WT First at 5. I'm Rafael de los Santos.
And I'm Charlize Ramos. The group sued the state university system, alleging the state education leaders improperly tried to disband the group. WFT's Kirsten Maselka is live at UF. Kirsten, the ACLU just released a statement about this case.
The ruling came down about 90 minutes ago, and in that release, ACLU officials say that the state is now on notice if they attempt to enforce the deactivation order. The press release goes on to state that the judge found Florida officials had no intention of deactivating the UF chapter. Last fall, Governor DeSantis called for the chapters to be disbanded, but the court based its rulings in part due to the statements of Chancellor Ray Rodriguez, and back in November, he stated that the UF and University of South Florida chapters were governed separately from the national organization. Howard Simon, interim executive director of the AC1U of Florida, says in part, not implementing the deactivation order for fear that the Chancellor Rodriguez and members of the Board of Governors would be held personally liable is a classic example of doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. The deactivation order should be withdrawn. The Florida Board of Governors has yet to comment or release a statement about today's ruling. Live at the University of Florida, Kirsten Maselka, WUFT News.
The city of Gainesville and Keep Alachua County Beautiful are in dispute over the use of a city property. The city says KACB unlawfully used a city property, saying it is unsafe and unfair. KACB chose not to comment when we reached out. The city manager's office says they found out that KACB was using a city-owned house on Tuesday. A since-deleted post on KACB's Facebook page alleges the city kicked them out unlawfully, but the city manager says there is no agreement to use the house and asked the group to leave immediately. The city says the house is going to house those in need through funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. This all started when KACB cleaned up the house as a part of a beautification event. Tyler Smith, the newly appointed director of KACB, alleged that there were public health issues with mold and sewage backup in the group's prior rented office. The group then announced they were making a move to a new address and updated their Sunbiz entry to the new address. Smith then updated the board following the move. A public records request was filed for everything between the city of Gainesville and the organization.
Get ready to feel the chill as temperatures are starting to take a dip. WFT's Derrah joins us now with the weather forecast.
Temperatures are beautiful right now, though we are trending right where our average high should be, so we're a little bit on the warmer end this evening. We just had a cold front sweep through, so you can see high pressure starting to filter in behind it. That's going to usher in our second round of cooler air this week. Skies are clear, that dry air cutting off our chance to see any clouds this evening, and it's breezy as you step out the door. We're feeling those winds from the north at around 10 miles per hour. Now, this evening, the breeze is going to die down. We'll see a beautiful sunset, but those northerly winds are going to cause temperatures to feel cooler. We'll talk about how cool it's going to feel coming up.
The city of Gainesville is extending its cold night shelter program until the end of the week. The UF weather team is forecasting temperatures to drop below 45 degrees. St. Francis House hosts shelter for families, women, and children, and Grace Marketplace hosts primarily for adults. CNS will stay in effect until temperatures rise above 45 Fahrenheit. The program usually runs from November 1st to March 31st. A Gainesville Jewish school is among dozens in Florida receiving a share of $25 million to increase safety and security measures. Governor Ron DeSantis made the announcement Tuesday. B'nai Israel Community Day School will receive an additional $40,000 to beef up security. After the Hamas-Israeli conflict began last year, Governor DeSantis called a special session to determine safety measures for the state's Jewish community. This money was allocated to the Department of Education during that special session to be distributed to the schools.
A Georgia teen is facing attempted murder charges in Marion County. Deputies say he shot a traveler in the head at a truck stop last summer. Earlier this week, 17-year-old Jaquavis McLean was brought from Valdosta to the Marion County Jail. Deputies say last July at the petrol truck stop in Reddick, McLean targeted the victim and his wife. Investigators say he and co-defendant Christopher Riley went up to the couple and fired off 2 shots, hitting the victim in the head. The pair took off in a pickup truck, which investigators say was stolen from the Clearwater area. The truck was found by the Valdosta Police Department. Riley is awaiting extradition to Marion County, while McLean is being held with no bond.
A Hawthorne man will spend the next 2 decades behind bars after being convicted of child pornography. 25-year-old Justin Crosby was convicted earlier this week. Back in 2022, the Gainesville Police Department began investigating Crosby after finding inappropriate images of a young girl on an instant messaging app. The victim was interviewed and identified Crosby as the suspect. Investigators revealed he met with the child on several occasions. In addition to production, Crosby is also facing another 20 years for distribution.
A suspect is in custody in Columbia County after an armed standoff with police. The suspect, Derrah Ross, barricaded himself in his camper at the intersection of Northeast Jacksonville and Northeast County Road. After residents were evacuated, announcements were given for Ross to surrender. Ross ignored the orders, forcing the SWAT team to use chemical agents on the camper. Shortly after, the suspect exited the camper and surrendered without a fight. More than $1.7 trillion are now owed in student loan debt in the U.S., which is 3 times greater than it was in 2006. WFT's Natasha Holt is live in the studio to share how the Biden administration is touting its new plan that puts borrowers on a faster track to repaying their loans.
If you haven't qualified for previous student loan relief, the Biden administration is touting a new federal program that gives everyone with student loans the opportunity to save. I spoke with White House economic officials about how this plan can help you pay less while paying off your student loans more quickly. The Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, known as SAVE, is an income-driven repayment plan. That means that it caps your student loan payments to a reduced monthly rate based on your income. And once you've been in the program for 20 years, the outstanding balance of your loan is automatically forgiven. Economists estimate that for the average borrower, enrolling in the program will save them tens of thousands of dollars.
We did some calculations here at the Council of Economic Advisors, and we estimated that for the typical person with a bachelor's degree who takes out, say, $30,000 in loans, their overall payments are actually going to be cut in half.
Whether you're a current student or have been paying off your loan for many years, everyone with student loans is eligible for the plan. After you're accepted into the program, your payments are automatically adjusted, and some people can even qualify for payments of $0 over their 20 years in the program. The plan applies to any federal student loan, so graduate degrees are just as eligible for the savings. Live in the studio, Natasha Holt, WUFT News.
28,000 people were at the Hogtown Medieval Fair this past weekend. That's according to the city of Gainesville. The city celebrated the 37th year of the fair. The sparring pairs and turkey legs were possible because of the help to put on the fair. 125 performers, 50 merchants, 36 volunteers, and city staff made it come to life. Gainesville's Mayor Harvey Ward says he commends his staff for putting together a memorable weekend that people will remember for years to come.
Coming up on WFT's First at 5, tax season is coming up.
And taxpayers should be on the lookout for fraud when doing their taxes. We'll tell you how to protect yourself from tax fraud and scammers when First at 5 returns.
You're watching WUFT-TV News.
It's almost time to flip the calendar to February, and for accountants, 'tis the season for tax season. WUFT's Jessica Nitti has information on what taxpayers should be looking out for to protect themselves.
Tax season is a time of deadlines and stress for millions of Americans. It's also a time when criminals look to exploit the system. The IRS reports in 2023, cases of fraudulently filed tax returns increased by over 30%. Your phone rings, and it's a call from the IRS. This is how many Americans fall for tax fraud each year. The population most susceptible to this fraud, the elderly. Diane Reagan is a member of the McAlpin community who became a victim of fraud.
Angry? Yes, very angry. I think it's horrible. People in the world today are just, not everybody, but there's so many that just don't care anymore.
Alachua County Sheriff's Office Public Information Officer Arthur Forgy says oftentimes scammers prey on the most vulnerable.
The IRS is not going to call you, and they are not going to send you an email. They are going to correspond by an official letter, and it is going to give you case numbers and numbers that you can use to verify that you know that you are securely talking to the IRS and that they are securely talking to you.
Certified public accountant Mark Schnoll says tax fraud starts when criminals get personal.
If a criminal were to get, just like any other identity theft, if they were able to get the person's personal information, name, social security number, that's mostly what they need. They could then file a tax return in their name that's completely fraudulent.
He feels the best way to protect yourself is by setting a PIN with the IRS. Officials we spoke to at the Alachua County Sheriff's Office said another way to protect yourself is to sign up for a credit monitoring service. The public should know there may not be much local law enforcement officials can do, but we're told reporting the authorities is important. Live in Gainesville, Jessica Nitti, WUFT News.
City Council members just approved an additional $500,000 in funding to finish construction on Ocala's skate park. It's a project that's been 10 years in the making. Back in 2014, the city approved $200,000 in funding to design the 18,000 square foot facility. The skate park opened in 2019. Not much was done since then except adding lights in 2020 so the park could stay open longer. Fast forward to earlier this week when the additional funding was approved, totaling $700,000 for the project.
The Marion Alachua Dog Training Association gave the Levy County Sheriff's Office's Canine Unit cooling vests. Levy County Sheriff's Office says Facebook says handlers constantly worry about the heat for the dogs. Canines work in the same conditions as officers, so these vests keep the dogs' core temperatures low so that they can work longer and efficiently. The dogs can ditch their fur coats when temperatures start to warm up. Levy County Sheriff's Office thanks MADTA for the donation.
Out over Ocala right now, we're seeing clear skies, and pretty much all of us are seeing those clear skies this evening, but that is soon set to change. We'll talk about those big changes coming our way on the other side of the break.
You're watching WUFT-TV News.
Temperatures aren't drastically warmer, but we are trending an upwards of 5 degrees warmer out west. Now, we did just have a cold front move through, but we're not seeing the difference just yet. We're at 65 degrees here in Gainesville, 67 in Ocala, 61 in Crystal River, and 63 degrees right now in Lake City. Now, as you look out over McIntosh, we're not seeing any clouds in the sky, and that's due to that dry air beginning to filter on in. You can see that in orange behind that cold front, that high pressure starting to move closer to the area, and that's preventing for those clouds to develop. So that's going to set the stage for clearer skies as we head into the overnight hours. And notice how we're in the upper 50s by 6 o'clock. So within the next hour, then over 10, 11, 12 o'clock, we're already in the upper and mid 40s. And that's going to set the stage for those temperatures to really plummet overnight. Wind speeds right now are at around 15 miles per hour, 20 out along the coast. Now, those wind speeds aren't going to be this high overnight tonight, but they're going to turn more out of the north, and that's going to cause our low of 39 degrees here in Gainesville to feel a few degrees cooler as we head into the overnight. So you'll be waking up to feels like temperatures after you factor in the wind chill in the mid and upper 30s. So you'll want to bundle up as you head out the door tomorrow, but you'll be able to lose those layers because we will be warming up right around average. So it's going to feel seasonable with those highs in the mid and upper 60s tomorrow. We are going to see a huge change coming this weekend. We do have a low pressure system nosediving at us from the Midwest. That's going to increase our rain chances as we head into the weekend. Now, the severity of these storms are still uncertain. It's too far out to tell, but this is the European model. It's showing a more widespread coverage. When we look at the GFS, that's showing that precipitation trend more to the south. So we'll continue to fine tune that and monitor that closely, but Saturday is definitely your better outdoor day. Lots of sunshine. We'll add those clouds back into the forecast later in the day. Sunday, though, will increase those rain chances. So by Sunday evening and Sunday night, that's when we'll see those rain chances skyrocket. We'll get through these seasonable temperatures, slightly warmer on Saturday, and then we're cool again next week.
Coming up in sports, we'll recap a high school basketball thriller from last night between Gainesville and Newberry. The stakes couldn't be higher as district playoffs are taking form, and the end of the regular season is slowly approaching. All that and more after the break.
You're watching WUFT-TV News.
Welcome to sports. I'm Daniel Haviv. Gators men's basketball is back on the road tonight against 10th-ranked Kentucky. Florida will have a second shot at beating the Wildcats. The Gators will look to extend their win streak to 4 games after defeating Georgia 102-98 in Mike White's return to Gainesville. The team had 5 players in double figures, showing that offensive production can come across the lineup. Micah Hanlockton dropped 23 points and a whopping 17 rebounds on 77% shooting from the field. His dominance in the paint is essential for any shot at an upset tonight. Head coach Todd Golden considers Saturday's win Hanlockton's best game as a Gator.
He's a guy that can find a way to fill the stat sheet, whether it be points or rebounds, without being the focal point offensively, which is a really, a hard thing to evaluate, and an even better talent, and he's a guy that you can clearly see the progress he's made, from the beginning of the year, which is really exciting for us.
Florida will look to lean on their big man as they take on Kentucky tonight. Tip-off is scheduled for 8 p.m. in Lexington. In other news around the SEC men's basketball landscape, last night South Carolina completed yet another upset. The Gamecocks beat number 5 Tennessee in Knoxville, and they also beat Kentucky earlier this season. The Gators will face this talented South Carolina team in Columbia on March 2nd. And another big game in the SEC. Ole Miss edged out Mississippi State 86-82. Both teams are currently projected to make the NCAA tournament. And last night was absolute cinema at Gainesville High School as the Hurricanes hosted Newberry on senior night. This next-door rivalry did not disappoint from the jump, as the Hurricanes, pictured in white, dominated the paint to jump out to an early lead. Craig Thomas Jr. and Cornelius Wright were making plays early and often. However, the Panthers clawed their way back with some big buckets. This remained a back-and-forth affair until the very end, when Newberry held for the final shot, but the Hurricanes' defense stood strong, and Luku comes sprinting down the court for the game-winning layup, none other than big man Cornelius Wright. His layup snapped a 3-game losing streak as the Hurricanes improved to 13-11 on the year. Head coach Mike Barnes said that this win was massive for morale purposes and to get on track for the fast-approaching playoffs.
It's a big win for us in the rankings and to try to give us a little bit of boost, for the state playoffs, hopefully if we can get in there. But yeah, I'm just really proud of the guys.
And speaking of the playoffs, Gainesville will host Leon next Tuesday in the district round, but first they will travel to East Side this Friday for their final regular season game. And taking a look at a few other great high school games from last night, the Buchholz Bobcats beat Santa Fe 62-50 to win their 4th straight game. Meanwhile, Palatka scored a whopping 88 points in their win against Keystone Heights. And the Columbia Tigers took care of business on the road against the Sewanee Bulldogs. And moving to some high school girls basketball, tonight we've got a big matchup as 11-6 PK Young hosts 14-3 Hawthorne. Tip-off for this game is scheduled for 7 p.m. And one last note, tonight the Miami Heat will host the Sacramento Kings at 7:30 p.m. The Heat are currently riding a 7-game losing streak, the longest ever, with Eric Spoelstra as their head coach.
Thank you, Daniel. Charlize and I are both from Miami. Sad times for our team.
Yeah, and just like our team, it doesn't look like the weather's getting any better this weekend. Derrah?
Well, unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. We'll enjoy the sunshine while we still have it. Gorgeous day tomorrow, and then those clouds filter in at the end of the day. And then a lot more rain arrives over the weekend. But then once we clear that on out of here, we'll see cooler conditions next week.
Thank you, Derrah. BBC World News is next, and PBS NewsHour is coming up at 7.
But your Florida news is always on WUFT.org. Have a good night.